Good afternoon and welcome to Galactic Soul Healing. Today we're going to again be doing some oracle messages from the Arcturian, Sirian, Blue Avian collectives. And today we're going to be focusing on the integration of the ego and your higher self. Okay, so it's going to be talking. It's a message for a collective message for people generally, but it's pertaining to your ego and your higher self. Okay, if this information resonates, of course. And the reason that this topic is kind of important is that normally it's a bit of a precursor to us being able to experience a more fuller connection with other spiritual energies. Okay, so before connecting more fully to spirit, we need to learn how to facilitate and allow our ego and our higher self to integrate and work together for our highest good. Okay, because generally people have been conditioned to accept the idea that they're actually naturally not connected to spirit. Okay, unless of course you have been brought up perhaps with a spiritual or religious belief system, or you have your own strong beliefs and you have your own connection to spirit and you've worked through that and you are able to do that for yourself. Okay, but a large percentage of people, I think, this is kind of what I've been directed to, the message that I've been directed to give, so it's suggesting to me that the message is needed. So it's kind of this integration between ego and higher self, which is also your wise self and which is also your spiritual self. So it's that part of you that is connected to spirit by default, because that's what it is. Your higher self is your spiritual aspect. Okay, and if you look at like Hindu mythology, belief systems and other Buddhic systems and things like that, the higher self, it's energetically, it's part of your aura, but it filters through everything. Okay, so you can research that philosophically as well. Okay, about the higher self, which is the spiritual self. So it's that part that's connected to cosmos, cosmic energy, spiritual energies. Okay, so it's a really beautiful, expanded part of yourself. So we've largely been conditioned as a civilization to believe that we are not connected to that and we are not connected to spirit. Okay, and this is the little vehicle that carries that idea that we are disconnected. So the ego is the one, is the thing. There are of course there are positive and negative aspects of ego. Okay, one of the positive aspects of ego is that it helps us to develop our personality, our ways of relating, our how we speak, and generally what kind of person we are. Okay, the negative side of it is that when it comes to accepting a higher aspect of yourself, sometimes it can put up a bit of a fight, or it can put up resistance or defense mechanisms or little negative self-talk or denials or all sorts of things that try and convince you, which is almost the observer, because when you can be aware when you're talking to yourself sometimes, or you can catch yourself going, wow, where did that little voice come from? Or that's interesting that keeps repeating itself. Okay, that's kind of the ego, because you can actually observe your ego working. Okay, if you're able to, this is another benefit of meditation, is that when you meditate, you learn how to become an observer of your own mind mechanisms, of your own thought patterns. You can observe them. Okay, and the other beautiful thing about the observer is I like to also think that that's generally probably a part of your wise self, because sometimes it's able to be a little bit more objective, or it's able to observe something for what it is. Okay, the wise self, what the wise self, higher self wants is or what its driving reason for existence is, to vibrate in love, unconditional love, compassion, peace, harmony, balance, all the good stuff, understanding, compassion, all of that. Okay, it wants the best for you. It wants for you to experience your highest good. Okay, and you're also your full potential. Okay, as a spiritual being, which as humans we are. It's simply this little thing over here that keeps us in that idea that we are not spiritual. But the good thing is that that's only one part of you that's telling you that. Okay, there's another part of you that's actually really connected to spirit already. Okay, but your awareness of that could be anything along a spectrum. Some people have a bit of awareness of it. Some people have intermittent awareness of that, okay, yeah, I am feeling connected. Some people have it for longer periods. Some people have it all the time. It depends on a lot of things. But if you're feeling a bit fixed and entrenched in this, and you're having real trouble kind of going, well, I don't think I have a higher self, or yeah, maybe, I don't know, you can actually do some work on your ego. So the idea is that this spread is going to be giving us some hints and tips about the kinds of things I think we're going to be doing 2 stacks. For instance, the ego stack will be the kinds of things that the ego does, things that it says to us, and also ways that we can work with it to assist it to start acknowledging this, and also maybe how it can begin a little dialogue with the higher self. Okay, this is with respect to you. So I'll just emphasize again that the reason we're doing this is because I've sort of been told that if the ego and the higher self can integrate and work together more, okay, there's a much higher possibility, there's much more likelihood of you experiencing a fuller, deeper connection with other spiritual energies. Okay, because if you think about it, it's sort of logical. I mean, if you're an ego and you don't even contemplate that you have a spiritual self, you're really not going to be going there in terms of, I'm going to be connecting to spirit now, are you? You have to really acknowledge that part of yourself before you can actually communicate with other spiritual energies. Okay, so we're talking about, it's really about higher self activation, that this integration, okay, ego accepting higher self helps to activate it. Okay, now the other thing is that this does not happen overnight. Little seeds can be planted. If you get a couple of little seeds of ideas or concepts from this reading that just really maybe just give your ego a little nudge into, hey, I need to start looking into it, that'd be great. Please don't put yourself under too much pressure to go, well, I'm never going to connect to spirit if I can't do this and yada yada. Okay, there are lots of different ways to integrate your ego. There are other different paths that you can do. For instance, if you're on a yogic path or you do lots of meditation, you'll naturally be doing this anyway. Okay, probably a lot of people are doing this anyway. I guess I'm putting this forward as a bit of an intellectual, conceptual message for those people that are more open to communicating about it in that way first off. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to say as well is that if you so with these decks today, I will start shuffling now. So with these decks, once again, if you receive any information from here, so for instance, I give a couple of meanings of a symbol or something that's here, and it doesn't resonate with you, and you come up with your own meanings of what the symbol means, then go with your own meaning or with the one that resonates the most with your gut feeling. Okay, because this is not about me telling everyone, hey, this is how it is. Okay, it's simply, and I've been told I have to make this really clear, that it's simply a little bit of putting ideas, planting little seeds of possibility, okay? Because sometimes image helps us to step into different ways of thinking. It can sort of appeal to our subconscious a little more. So Billy for the decks, this was the Cosmic Tarot by Norbert Losch, this one here. That's this back deck. Then we have here Loving Words of Jesus by Doreen Virtue. Yep, and I have sort of pre-shuffled these, so we won't need to shuffle too. I will cut the decks in a minute. Carolyn Miss cards, archetype cards by Carolyn Miss. Okay, there are 80 cards in this deck, which is just huge. I have shuffled them previously also, but just to make it look like I'm not doing a fake shuffle, there we go. Okay, we have the Starseed Oracle by Rebecca Campbell. Okay, and yeah, so this is all about messages that, you know, for our ego and our higher self. Now we're going to be doing 2 stacks, but obviously there'll be a lot of overlap, okay, because between the stacks. This one is The Keepers of the Light by Kyle Gray. And the other thing too is that you know, a lot of people are perhaps even just connecting to spirit automatically, even without consciously thinking that, oh, my ego and my higher self need to integrate, you know. So everyone is doing things in different ways. This is the Mists of Avalon Oracle by Rose and Sarah. I'm showing you these decks just in case you want to get your own stack, your own deck. Okay, showing you the covers. Right, now we're just going to put these here, and you know, once again, like I said, you know, whatever resonates with you. If it doesn't resonate, or you even come up with your own meaning to things, please go with what resonates with you the most. Now we do just cut these because I've got no idea where I'm cutting them. I'm just cutting them. Okay, if I do all the cutting first, that will be easier. Right, and we can just go bang. Let's put them that way. That one's done. Okay. 2. Three. Okay, right, there we have it. Now this stack here is the ego. Okay, now it's going to be the kinds of things that the ego either does, or what we can do with it, okay, to help it to start acknowledging the higher self, okay, within you. Now this is very interesting, isn't it? We'll look at them one by one. I'm just going to do that because I'd like you to just pick up the symbology first. Okay, devil. Let's put it to the back. This one, as the archetype card, is the networker. Okay, so the light attributes are: enhances unity through the sharing of information, engenders social awareness and empathy. Okay, and the shadow attributes are: conveys information only for personal gain, spreads fear and falsehood. Okay, we're going to come back. Now, this is the Words of Jesus card here. Just read that first. Whosoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother. So he's talking about that whoever does the will of Father is basically one of his family. Okay, so it's a big family. Okay. This one is the Starseed Oracle. It's a beautiful image. So it says a new earth. The small print underneath says, it's happening, keep holding the vision. Okay, so you can see that some of these cards are going to be about how we can help the ego to assist it to integrate with higher self, and some of them are going to be about where it's at and what we need to look at in terms of perhaps what the obstacles could be to that integration. This one is the Miriam. This is the Keepers of the Light cards. Sacred Vision. Isn't that interesting? I've had 2 vision words there mentioned. Choose to forgive in order to heal. See the light in all. Remember that love has no boundaries. Choose to forgive in order to heal. It's a really beautiful image. Suggesting relationship. And I'm just going to put in there now. That's even suggesting ego and higher self. Right, this is the last one, and we'll talk about them more in a minute. Chalice Hill. Now, there's some words around the outside there. Just let me read those. Faith, balance, wellness, yin and yang. That is a really beautiful image. Okay, we are back to the devil now. I'm just going to put him here to the little brown backdrop because that's a bit easier to focus on. Now, the ego does tend to if in your personality there are challenges or you're having difficulties, the ego does tend to like to perpetuate the familiar. So it tends to, for instance, if you have addictions or you're chained to things, or if you are, say you kind of adopt, I'm going to use the word slavery, but of course, in a different context. If you tend to slave a lot for others and you don't give yourself time out, okay, your ego will tend to keep you doing that. Okay, this is also suggests a bit of like entrapment here as well. So basically, whatever it goes back from childhood. So whatever you're conditioned to believe, your beliefs, values and attitudes that you've adopted through childhood, unless you've done like a lot of personal work, personal growth, okay, which you can change those things over time, of course. But if you sense that you haven't done much of that personal growth stuff, and you are kind of, you feel that you're kind of in maybe some sort of rut in your life, okay, that could just be that your ego is kind of has had more of a say. But I tell you what, like it can take a lot of years. Like the ego will put up a huge fight, and I take my head off to people that are actually wanting to just look at their ego, because sometimes it's not an easy thing to do. Like I said before, there are positives for ego, okay, because sometimes for instance, someone that sort of does tend to run around for other people a lot and doesn't do anything for themselves or have time out for themselves, okay, they can still actually be a very strong person. They can be a really loving, caring person, okay? I'm not putting people down that do that. I'm just saying that if you are one of those people and you would like to tap into your higher self, okay, you will have to find time. You will have to be able to give yourself some time, and to also perhaps look at the ego behaviours that are preventing you from giving yourself time out. Okay, it's not just slavery, it can be addictions. So you might be addicted to cigarette smoking, okay, you might be addicted to chocolate bars, you might be addicted to alcohol, okay, any kind of addiction, which of course is, I get that there are certain things about substances that can give you a high, right, or a feel-good thing. But in the long run, an addiction is more like a total reliance on a substance to give you a so-called good feeling, rather than relying on your higher self, your inner wisdom, to create that beautiful peace and high and feelings of oneness, acceptance, unconditional love, and all that sort of stuff, and comfort. Okay, so, and usually with substance addictions there are long-term health effects. So and this is the thing about the ego, okay, it will come up with all sorts of reasons as to why you should maintain an addiction. Now, I kid you not, there can be a lot of defense mechanisms, and sometimes they're in layers. So if you start looking at this, just beware that there's going to be there's going to be a few layers that you may need to work through over time. But it's worth it. Okay, it's worth looking at it. The other thing here too is that these beings here sort of look like they're a bit of a slave to this master up here. So they're not actually giving themselves permission to be their own masters, are they? And this is the other thing about ego higher self integration. When the ego realizes that the higher self is actually very powerful, it says, okay, come on board with me, and we're going to create something awesome together. This is not a case. This here is like people being disconnected from their own inner higher self, their own inner power. Okay, and it's not that the higher self wants to have power to lord it over people. This is not like a higher self figure here. Okay, the higher self actually wants unconditional love, acceptance, peace, harmony, balance. Okay, this little image here is the opposite of that. This is oppression, violence, slavery. Okay, and yeah, it's not, there's a focus on the material here. Obviously there's a very focus on physical, but probably more to do with like physical pleasure, which is transitory. Okay, it's not the long-lasting pleasure that one can obtain from integrating ego and higher self and having a beautiful soul purpose and getting fantastic, awesome feelings of happiness from, manifesting that purpose in the world and sharing that with others. Okay, it's a totally different type of happiness, right? But, if you're in this and you're happy to be there, well, that's, everyone has a choice to make, right? But in terms of the ego, this is kind of more or less probably depicting the negative aspects of the ego. Okay, positive aspects of the ego, which is probably described more accurately in this one here, which is a little bit like the networker. Okay, so up here, some of the positive aspects of ego, and this is some of the strengths that it has. Okay, so it can enhance unity through sharing of information. Okay, engenders social awareness and empathy. So, your ego is fantastic. Like, you can do a lot of really great stuff. Okay, and you might even like to do just a little thing of like, get a page and just draw a line down the middle and go, what are the positive aspects of my ego and what are the negative aspects of it? Okay, what addictions and things do I have there? And then on the other side, what are the great things about my personality, about myself, that I can really bring to, that I could really integrate with a higher self purpose? I think it would be really fantastic to have a really balanced approach to this, because I'm just aware that, ego exploration can be a little confronting at times. Anyway, so let's look down here. So some of the shadow attributes conveys information only for personal gain. Now that is definitely a thing that, say, a personality, an ego will do, particularly, say, like a narcissistic type of personality. They're really only interested in what they can get out of people, what they can get from things, okay? But not just narcissists, okay? Spreads fear and falsehood. So that would be someone that, is like a bit of a gossiper, someone that just likes to create dramas and upset people just for the sake of it. That's definitely a type of a personality trait as well. And that is definitely, like, you could pretty much put that, in this category here of, negative aspects of the ego. We can bundle them all in there. All these shadow ones are the negative ones. We can bundle them in there. Okay, but in terms of the positive ones, it's really lovely. Basically the networker. So it's networking. So it's, socializing, using one's personality, okay, sharing of information, engendering social awareness and empathy, assisting people. You can still have a compassionate ego, okay? You can still be a lovely, caring, compassionate person, right? And that's one of the great things about the ego. And this person here looks like they're actually sorting mail, which is sort of like, it's like a job, an occupation. And that's nothing too. Ego really assists us with actually doing stuff, right? Let's see what the next card has to offer us, whether it's negative or positive. And what we'll do, we're looking at the negative and positives first, and then we'll go into how it can integrate with the higher self. Well, no, actually, we can do that now, because obviously some of these great light attributes are really strengths and qualities of the personality that would definitely be in line with what the higher self wants for that being, okay? In terms of its energetic reason for existence, okay? Some of these stuff up here would be in line with, of course, perpetuating unconditional love, acceptance, peace, harmony, and balance, okay? Provided it doesn't go into this, right? Now, let's look at this one. This is interesting here because it mentions family, okay? Whosoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven. So that's really saying, Jesus is saying, whoever is in alignment with unconditional love-like consciousness and is acting in accordance with that alignment is, part of my family, right? So that's another positive aspect of ego, because even though you might have little personal things going on, little personality traits you don't like about yourself, or little addictions that you've got and things like that, and defense mechanisms you put up because you don't feel like you can move forward with yourself, with your personal growth, there's still a lot of wonderful things about you, okay? And one of them is that you can still be acting in accordance with trying to be a good person, okay? And the fact that it's mentioned here, brother, sister and mother, and the word father is in there, so that is alluding to, I believe Spirit is actually alluding here to our family of origin. So if you want to do some in-depth work on your ego, look at your childhood, your family of origin, how you form connections, and whether you consider that there was some dysfunctional relating going on, or whether you were like pretty happy, and whether there was like, if it was really a positive relational patterns that were happening within your family of origin, okay? Because that can give you some clues, because sometimes if there's been a bit of dysfunction, or even a lot of dysfunction in your childhood, okay, you can unconsciously take on dysfunctional relating patterns yourself, and you can perpetuate them unknowingly right through to your adulthood life, Okay, and that's really interesting to observe. Yeah, but like I said, it's introspective work to look at ego. But the beautiful thing here is that, Jesus is actually alluding to spirit connection here. So just because someone is feeling like they're very maybe entrenched in family matters or whatever, it doesn't mean that then they are, incapable of experiencing a connection with spirit, or a connection with God, or connection, unconditional love, light, consciousness. It's totally possible. Okay. And really, that's what Jesus' message was. He was really just trying to let people know that, hey, you can connect to God. Spirit is real. This is the other thing I wanted to mention before, is that we've been conditioned to believe that spirit is not real. Okay, the spiritual energies are not real. They're a waste of time, that they're invalid, that they're, just a figment of imagination. But they're actually real. This is what Jesus was saying. Like, I think there'd be a lot of Christians around that would not say, well, they're not going to say that Jesus was full of crock and bull, are they? So basically, anyone now that's saying, you can connect to spirit is basically saying the same thing as what Jesus is here. So I'm just backing him up. Okay? And I did ask him in a prayer, and I think he's backing me up right now, because it's definitely true. Now, because spirit's definitely real, that's what I'm trying to say. Now, this okay, so let's look at this one. So this one's lovely in terms of ego, because Jesus is really putting spirit and ego right in there, isn't he? It's like mentioning family. You're one of my family if you believe in spirit. And but it's also alluding to family of origin. We can look at that. The new earth. Now, this is saying a vision. Keep holding. It's happening. Keep holding the vision. Okay? So I'm going to suggest that for your ego right now, okay, this little vision here is literally like, this is your ego here. Okay? If this is spirit here, that vision is that your ego can connect with your higher self here, which means that then you can connect with that, other consciousnesses and spirit. Okay? So the vision is one of integration, ego and higher self. If this is your aim in order to connect more fully to spirit, your vision is integration. It's literally almost that symbol there. Integration of my ego and higher self. You know what would be fantastic to do? You could literally go and get yourself some chalk pastels or paints. Get a big sheet of A3 or even an A4 or something, paper, and draw your own symbol of draw your ego and your higher self integrating. Create your own symbol of that. Okay? You might like to think about colour and shape and things like that. What colour would your ego be, or what colours would it comprise, and what colours would your higher self comprise, and just kind of draw something that will that shows integration, okay, because that is your vision. And this is what we're saying. The ego has the capacity to integrate with this, which makes it an amazing thing. Okay, and not only that, once it's integrated higher self, the ego is the thing that will carry the purpose, the higher self purpose through. Okay, it will bring it out. So do not downplay the ego. Just consider it as something that needs tweaking, possibly. Okay, I think that might be a good perspective to have. Now, this is also a really beautiful image. Sacred vision. Okay, now, see this symbol here? I can't believe there's synchronicity now, because I did mention before this is almost like could be your ego and your higher self, because basically your higher self needs your ego. Okay, and if you're going to evolve spiritually and move up into fourth, fifth dimension, your ego needs your higher self like a lot. They need each other. So look at this. They are twins. Okay, your ego needs your higher self. And look at this. This to me looks like a beautiful symbol of integration. And look at this. This flower here. I mean, if you take nothing away from this stack other than this image, I think that's just fantastic. You've literally got this, they're both touching this beautiful flower, and this symbol is integration here, and it's almost like there's two levels of integration. We have one circle here, then we have another circle here, and then there's literally a flowering. So it's literally like you have a lower, initially there has to be some lower integration or some acknowledgement. The ego has to acknowledge the higher self initially, okay? There needs to be some foundation work that needs to be done, and that might be addressing some of your little ego blocks, okay? The next level is you start to have even a more fuller acceptance of it and move into a more fuller thing, okay? And then the flowering is literally like your ego and your higher self flower out together. They connect with other spiritual energies even more so, okay? And it's just fantastic. That's not to say while you're down here that you can't pray and ask for spiritual assistance. Please do that. I'm definitely not saying if you don't feel integrated that you can't pray and get spiritual assistance, because if you're doing some meditation, you may well have moments there where you feel like spirit is listening and you can kind of communicate. It might be your higher self speaking to you, but it might also be spirit coming in and really working through your higher self to reach your ego. Okay, that's another beautiful thing that can happen. And this is also a really awesome symbol here, because this is, yeah, I just can't believe it. Now, let's read the bottom again. Choose to forgive in order to heal. So I'm going to suggest that that is your ego. If you need to forgive yourself in order to heal your ego, work through that, okay? Because I have kind of done that a little bit myself, because, you know, when sometimes you wake up into some of your dysfunctional relating patterns, there is some self-forgiveness that has to go on. Yeah. And you do have to love yourself, keep loving yourself no matter what, and that's a healing thing as well. Choose to forgive in order to heal. See the light in all. So not only do you start seeing the light in yourself then, actually what happens is that when you do forgive yourself and you start seeing that there's a bit more light within you, then you can also start seeing that in others more, or you automatically will. And that's really awesome as well. And under the last line here is, remember that love has no boundaries. And this is the unconditional love that you can direct towards yourself. And you know, the love that has no boundaries is literally this spiritual love here. It is very unconditional love. It's unconditional love like consciousness, and this is what your higher self resonates in all the time. It's simply the ego just needs to become more aware of it. Okay, it's just really a matter of the ego just kind of dropping the defenses and just kind of being a bit more open to the beautiful energies of the higher self. Okay, and yeah, and the spirit can actually work through your higher self to reach you in your ego as well. Okay, and now the love thing is really awesome. Unconditional love. Okay, and it has no boundaries. So while I have drawn lines around these things to kind of define them, which looks like they've been boundaried, that looks like they have boundaries, right? In reality, they're not there. And in reality, if you can put more love, self-love in there, more direction of self-compassion and stuff like that, self-forgiveness, this all just becomes really loving, and you'll automatically your ego will start acknowledging your higher self. Okay, be more open to it, and you will automatically start perceiving more spiritual energies, or you will definitely feel more that you have spiritual connection. Okay. Yeah. Now, this one, Chalice Hill. That is interesting, isn't it? Because see this beautiful girl here, lady, she is holding a cup. And here is the moon. Now, in terms of our little diagram here, I don't know about you, but I'm looking at that and thinking the cup is like the ego and the moon is like the higher self. Or you could say the ego is the actual human here, the being, and the higher self is the cup that could perhaps be becoming, and the spirit is here. So the higher self is actually receiving beautiful, like a moonlight there. It's almost like it's getting full. It's full of the moonlight or the spiritual light. Okay, the higher self is. And it's literally like the ego, the lady here is going to drink from that cup. So the ego is going to drink from the cup of the higher self and become integrated, because once she drinks it, it's going to blend in. It's going to be inside of her, isn't it? It's going to integrate in. That's one way to interpret that picture there. Okay. The little words we have around the outside are faith, wellness, balance, yin and yang. Now, the faith is that the ego does need to have a little bit of faith that the higher self is there. Okay? And also that spirit is there. That the whole reason for why it needs to integrate the higher self is so that it can be more one with spirit and be more spiritual. Okay? And that's also not to say that the ego will then have to lose complete control, relinquish its entire self to the higher self and be dissolved into nothing and basically become completely disempowered. No, that is not true. That's not what the higher self wants. The higher self simply wants to be heard, to be given a voice, and to be integrated into the wonders of the ego. Because you can even set up a little conversation between your own ego and your higher self. Because if the ego is scared of the higher self, okay, of course the ego is going to say, rack off, leave me alone. Okay, so the higher self might have to do some buttering up, some reassuring, and some comfort work with the ego to just go, look, yeah, okay, I'm spiritual, and yeah, hey, I am powerful, but I'm not here to actually subvert you completely. I'm not here to annihilate you. I, the higher self, am here to integrate with you, to work with you, so that we can come to an agreement together about what our new purpose is going to be, about what our soul purpose is going to be. And you know what? We can even do that alongside of the other stuff that you have to do as well. If we can work something out, that'll be fantastic. Right? So isn't this interesting? Balance. This is amazing, this card. Balance. Which is also the higher self saying, look, ego, we can actually balance, like you can balance your time between, the time you spend with me and the time you have to do other things. But please just let me in on what's going on. Right? There's balance. Like I said before, it's not about the ego giving up itself, disappearing and going, okay, the higher self is running the show completely now. That is not the beginning phases of integration. That is not this circle here. This, oh my God, I just realised, look, this is almost like the ego and the higher self, and this is spirit here. Because the ego always needs to be there. That is the foundation. That is your the soul that's come through all of those lives and all the strengths and knowledge that you have and all the wisdom that you have. Okay? The higher self is like the icing on the cake. It's probably more than the icing, right? It's the icing and above, right? But the balance, okay? The balance is really important. And wellness. So this whole integration thing is not supposed to put you into, mental health and emotional stress and, discomfort. It's designed to put you into a more loving, harmonious way of being within yourself. Okay, so that you can develop a more unconditional, loving mindset, a better relationship with yourself, a better relationship and an understanding of what your soul purpose is. Okay, so I mean, you could talk about emotional, physical, emotional, and mental and spiritual wellness here. It's really a beautiful healing. This whole integration thing is a healing process. Okay, it's spiritual. It's more spiritual healing, but it is emotionally and mentally healing for you as well. Okay. Balance. Now, balance is yin and yang. So yin and yang, it's like masculine and feminine. Or here we have ego, which is kind of more rooted in material, and we have a higher self, which is more based in spiritual. So we have the material and the spiritual. Okay. Now, it's suggesting balancing that as well. Okay, we need to balance our earthing and grounding type of stuff that we do, our daily lives, balanced with what are we going to do spiritually for our higher self, and start thinking about bringing in some little things that will allow our higher self to have a bit more of a voice, so that we can feel that. And you know what will happen? That our lives, that if you're very rooted in this and you haven't started looking at this, once you start bringing this in, it will even imbue your life with a bit more meaning. And you'll get more fulfillment from your life. Okay? So not only is it wellness, but it's happiness as well, and meaning that will be on the increase. So that is really awesome. Now, if we come back to this little guy here, right? See, it's good to actually look at all the cards, because now we can put him in perspective, can't we? Because we can just go, well, okay, ego, you might have some stuff going on. There's stuff going on that's, blocked this integration of the higher self. But you know what? There's a whole lot of good that's going to come from integrating this higher self. That, hey, and also I'm going to be able to just allow myself, the ego is going to be able to have its own voice in there as well, in the integration phase. That there's a whole lot of good stuff. The other thing is that it can be achieved. Integration can be achieved, because basically Jesus is telling us that we can do it. Well, he did it, and and so this site just pales into insignificance, doesn't it, in the big picture? Because once all this stuff is kind of worked through, we have so many other wonderful, awesome things that we can experience. Okay, like this one here is just awesome. I cannot believe, I really thank Spirit, because sometimes synchronicities in the cars just blow me away. Like, this is vision. Okay, and this other one here was the sacred vision of the Miriam. So really, it's just kind of giving your ego a little message here visually. And the other really good thing is that behind all of this, or within and throughout that, is your subconscious. At the moment, if you're quite ego dominant and fairly focused on your conscious living, and you haven't kind of looked at this higher self, and say you haven't looked at your subconscious either, it sometimes means that your higher self aspect is simply nestled there in your subconscious, because it hasn't brought itself up into full consciousness. So another good little segue into integrating ego and higher self is to start doing some dream work. Tap into the depths of your subconscious, because that has some info in there too. That can have some give you some insights and some directions about where to look. You might be able to research dream work. I have mentioned before, I've done other videos on mentioning dream work. So you can do your own interpretations of your own dreams, okay? Yeah, just record your dreams over a month or two and just see if there's some patterns that evolve. And yeah, because your dreams are actually speak in your own subconscious language. Dreams are pictorial. Okay, they're very image based. This is why I use cards, because they are image based. So there might be, if you go away from this video after you've watched it, there might be one or two cards or images that kind of keep coming up in your mind. Okay, it might be actually a really good idea to just go and find a piece of paper, even a pencil, and just sort of sketch down the image roughly. Okay, because there's something about that image that's really helping your subconscious to kind of switch on to something. And you might even just like to get another piece of paper and just do some free writing on that image that keeps coming up. You know, I'd really suggest doing that, because that can also be that your ego is just going, oh, there's a subconscious part behind the ego. Okay, the ego is not subconscious, that is very conscious. Okay, but sometimes the higher self, some of the higher self aspects can certainly be in your subconscious as untapped potentials. Okay, so if some of that images speak to you, make a note of them, write about them, because if you bring your subconscious on board, that really beautifully assists and supports your ego to start integrating your higher self, believe it or not. Okay, because it helps the ego to shift out of psychic inflexibility. So if you're very fixed in things, if you start doing some subconscious work, that will help to loosen up the psychic stiffness, if you will, of the ego. Okay, particularly if you sense that you're in behavioural ruts, but also just not even necessarily that. It can be just any image that really speaks to you. Okay, so we could probably put that stack down. Wow, have we been speaking for an hour on this stack? Sorry, people. I was going to keep this video short. Oh my god, I need water. See, that was my little ego there, because one of my ego things is that it tends to be sometimes a little bit of a drama queen. Got to cut back on that. Now, higher self, wise self, spiritual self. Okay, this will be interesting, won't it? This is the stack here. I haven't pinched cards from anywhere else. Right, let's see what the Cosmic Tarot has to say. Oh, wow. Isn't that fantastically beautiful image? Oh my god. 8 of Pentacles. Even just as I'm looking at that, it's a little bit like, for me, this is like the beautiful higher self, okay, looking down at this little rose here, which is growth, which is ego, okay, and these are all the things that the ego has done, has accomplished. Even it can be representative of all the lives that the soul has been through, you know, and it's because there's a bush behind it. It's very natural. Okay, so it's been a natural evolution, right? And some of these things can represent difficulties and blocks as well. But isn't this just beautiful? Like, it's literally like the higher self is just looking down. So really the higher self is saying, look, ego, really just consider me as a benevolent part of the benevolent aspect that is actually admiring you and respecting where you're at and where you've been, and that, you know, I'd really love to work with you more closely so that we can do something even more amazing together. She's literally looking down. It's almost like a meditative. You know, the other beautiful thing I just realised there's actually, I don't know if you could see that, it's literally a triangle of light that's sort of coming from above here. So that's sort of like saying, you know, this is spirit shining down, and this here is connected. It's all connected together. Like we said before, the spirit connects through higher self and filters down into your ego as well. That's how it works. Okay, I really love that image. That's just amazing. That's actually one of my favourite cards in the deck as well. Now, I realise that traditionally the Eight of Pentacles has a different meaning, but I think it is one of it is stability and equilibrium. It's because the 8 is quite a stable number, but it's sort of quite developed as well. So it's sort of to do with development, and sort of the higher self is saying, if you would like to develop further, we need to integrate, and it will be really good because we have backing of spirit as well. Just awesome. And it's literally like this here. In that case, when we do that, love has no boundaries. This is working really well, these decks. I can't believe it. Let's put that to the back. Okay. Oh wow. Sirian. Now she is a wise... I can't believe this. We've just put wise self, right? I think she's one of these goddesses that are renowned for wisdom. Let me just look up here. Inspiration, rebirth, creativity, transformation. So this is the higher self saying, ego, if you would like to develop in these ways, aka be more inspired, go through a rebirth and a really great transformation, and experience greater creativity, actually utilizing creativity is really good, then hey, let's work together. And see this little dog here? That is almost, that's another image that might really stick with you, because this here is like the highest self, okay, a very wise, connected to spirit, okay, and this is the pot here. I'm going to say that I'm going to call that the pot of potentials, the pot of the potential of the brewing of the energies of the higher self in the ego, and the wonderful aromas and things it's going to be emitting there. You know, this little dog here is it's a little bit like the ego. If this image resonates with you, that might be like, say, for someone that the ego is sort of like a bit uncertain about the higher self, is feeling like maybe a little bit scared, but nonetheless, dogs are very intuitive. So it's almost saying that if ego-wise, you intuitively, there's something about the higher self that you intuitively think, yeah, I think I do need to have a look at that. It's saying move forward on that intuition, on that sense. I'm just going to read briefly about Sirian, because I think she is a something about wisdom in there as well, but we have alluded to also creativity, which is another thing that the ego can use. I remember mentioned before too about doing new things, helping to shift your psychic inflexibility. So if you feel that even considering higher self is a challenge for you, try and do something creative, do some art, okay, and even do it regularly, like maybe once a week, twice a week or more. Sirian, let's see, okay, page 94, because that will help you to loosen up and just shift things in your psyche, help you to go through different experiences. If you can be creative, okay, doing creative activities. So this one says here, surrender yourself to the flow of life and allow your inner light to shine and connect with your divine spark as your destiny unfolds. Your divine spark is your higher self, your wise self, your spiritual self, okay? That is your divine spark. Isn't this amazing? It's come up in higher self. Oh my God, there's just a few lines here of message. Connect with your divine inner knowing, aka higher self, wise self, and ask what your soul is calling for you to be and do. And the ego can be part of that, okay? Take a creative direction and transform yourself and your world into something or someone new. That doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be all of a sudden. Okay, it's just gradually moving towards something else, perhaps. Be confident, express your talent, let your light shine. So that is awesome. Okay. Yeah, it's talking about creativity here, because it's saying when you see this card, okay, when you're about to take a creative direction, when you finally decide it's time to take up art, join a choir, create crafts, a dress, a quilt, write that novel or book of poetry you've always wanted to do an interior design course, get a master's degree in fairy tale studies, a bit humorous, the possibilities are endless. Sirian gives you the courage to follow through with the deal you've made with yourself. Okay, so it's talking about your higher self is also your inner creative self. It's your creativity is part of your higher self. Okay, so if you don't do anything creative in your life at the moment, I would strongly suggest that you find something creative to do. And you could even probably Google, creative activities, 100 items or 100 activities of creativity. If you've got no idea what you want to do, just try and just do some research and find something that you like to try. And obviously you can do something that's appropriate for your budget. You don't have to have a lot of money to do creative stuff, okay? You can be quite resourceful, and yeah, that is awesome. So that's a little clue. The higher self is saying, hey ego, if you'd like to kind of look at me a little more, just start doing something creative, because that'll help to bring us together, okay? And that's probably a good point to take on board. Mercury, open communication. This is a caduceus symbol here, a symbol of healing. So we already mentioned before that there's a healing going on with when your higher self is wanting to, when your ego is wanting to integrate with higher self and vice versa. And that does start to happen. That is a healing process. Now, get a weight off your chest, speak up with love and be heard, open communication. So that's also suggesting to me that your higher self and your ego can actually communicate. So in a meditation you might like to do, you could actually do some writing of E for ego and H for higher self, and just go, ego says such and such, and higher self says the answer or what is next in the conversation. Okay, a response is the word I'm looking for. So it's really suggesting, the higher self is suggesting here, or spirit suggesting, that the higher self really wants open communication. It would really love the ego to communicate more with it. Okay. And it's going to be healing ultimately. And the other thing too is that it's even saying to the ego, look, if you've got some heavies going on and you want to take a weight off, tell me about it. So you could literally, as your ego, if you're going through stuff, you could literally write a letter to your higher self. Just go, look, I'm sick of this, I've had this, I've done all this, and yada yada yada. Okay, what are we going to do about it? Or how could you help me with all this? Write that letter out, put it somewhere, just let it incubate. Go for a walk, come back to it in 2 or 3 days, and the higher self might have a message for you. Or during that time, maybe over a week or something, you might get some insights come in. Okay. Now, there's lots of other ways that you could do that. Okay, that's a suggestion. That's just one suggestion. There's lots of different other ways that you can foster communication between your ego and higher self. One of them obviously is meditation. The other one is doing something creative. Or you can actually go and do transpersonal counselling or transpersonal art therapy. Will be of assistance as well. Do some artwork. Let's look at this one. Oh wow, this came up again previously in a reading, didn't it? Cosmic heart. This keeps coming up, folks. The cosmic heart. This came up in a magical heart reading. Devotion, potency, make your life a moving prayer. So the higher self is really saying to the ego, even if you can't see me, you're having trouble acknowledging me, just really have faith and make your life, as much as possible, a sacred prayer. So if you do have an inkling that there is spirit out there, even if you can't perceive your own higher self, just pray, appeal to spirit for assistance, okay? And eventually, you will acknowledge me, or you will perceive me more so. Because sometimes, and I notice this, I think sometimes when we pray, we are actually praying. Initially, if we're having trouble connecting to God or Spirit, what we're doing is we're appealing to our higher self when we pray sometimes. We're actually praying to our higher aspect of ourself. Okay? Even though religiously some people go, well, when you pray, you're actually praying to God. My answer to that is your higher self is the light that comes from God. Your higher self is kind of God essence anyway. So in some ways, you're praying to both. Okay, you're appealing to both. But it's just semantics, isn't it? Like, you can work that out for yourself, whichever one resonates the most with you, do that, okay? Now, I'm not saying that, people's higher selves, well, we are angelic beings, so we are potentially of quite high frequency, okay? And yeah, that's really just awesome. The cosmic heart. So the higher self is also saying, if you feel downhearted, pray and ask for assistance. And we will, when we work together, we will actually activate your cosmic heart, and it will be wonderful. Okay. Unconditional love. Sorry, that's the back of the Jesus card. Wait a minute. Who have we not done? Okay, we have done this one. We have one left. Oh, we have Jesus as well. Okay. Let's start with this one first. Child wounded. Okay. The light attributes of the wounded child awakens compassion and desire to serve other wounded children. Opens the learning path of forgiveness. Now, it's not interesting because that is the back of a woman there with obviously long hair and holding two children, or a man. And it's a little bit like that's what the higher self does. The higher self is very loving. If you have wounds, like inner wounds, like if you feel like you have an inner wounded child, in other words, when you were growing up, you had to experience a lot of dysfunction in your family of origin, you could well be a bit wounded. And the higher self is really comforting you there. Yeah, and the shadow attributes blames all dysfunctional relationships on childhood wounds, resists moving on through forgiveness. So it's sort of saying that if you are wounded, you can, it can be a bit challenging, because you can be caught in ruts, okay, and you can tend to devalue yourself a lot. And not only that, you can become quite entrenched in ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving that make it difficult for you to forgive either those people that have so-called wronged you, or difficult to forgive yourself, or even forgive the whole situation for it even to have existed. The higher self in that way offers a lot of comfort and wisdom in the way of, if you can tap into your higher self, it will literally assist you to step into an understanding of those trials that you experienced as a learning phase, and as something that you agreed to when you came down and incarnated, and as something that has actually, in actual fact, made you strong, and also made you deeply empathic and understanding of other people that have been wounded. So even if you feel completely down, like you've been hammered your life throughout your life, okay, take from that what strengths and understandings and empathies you would have for someone who's gone through something similar. Because when you can turn that around, that is your higher self helping you to turn that around. Because these shadow attributes here are describing someone who's been wounded but's remaining in ego. So for someone that's really wounded, okay, if they start looking into their higher self and start acknowledging it, what it can assist them with is really self-redemption, and it's a saving grace. Okay, it can really assist people to get their self-worth back, because everyone is worthy. Everyone has a higher self. Everyone has a wise self. Everyone is connected to spirit. Okay, and this is one of the, this is obviously the boon of integration, is that if people are in very low vibrational emotional states and ruts, integration will help them to move through it and out the other side into something that's a lot better than just remaining in ego completely. Okay, because the ego has to be accepted, and it's not like the high self is not saying we're going to ignore everything that you've gone through and that you just have to forget about it and move on and do something else. That's not what the higher self says. The higher self is very honouring of the deep, if I can use the word, crap or experiences and troubles and things that you've been through. Okay, and it really shifts you into a new perspective of that, a new understanding of it. Okay, yeah, there's a few layers to that, and I would suggest, if you're experiencing this, if you do want to do deep personal work, try and find a counsellor or a therapist, psychotherapist, that will assist you with that. Like, basically say it to them up front. I feel like I've been really wounded as a child, and I actually want to move through that, and I want to just be really supported to come out the other side, and I want to have a new life. Because you can, little bit by little bit. And oh wow, this is just awesome. So this is really the higher self, really putting another perspective on, like trauma, hurt, grief, all sorts of stuff. Okay, for the ego, because the ego does like to remain in pain, emotional pain, mental pain. No one likes to remain in physical pain, but particularly emotional and mental stuff, it likes to keep in that. Okay, whereas the higher self is saying, the higher self holds the key to basically substantially reducing, if not causing disappearance of the pain, emotional and mental pain and anguish. Okay, that's what the higher self is offering as a result of integration, which I think is just awesome. That's worth everything in my book. And this is a beautiful message from Jesus as well. Pray always. That's just a fantastic thing to I just got chills. That's just a fantastic thing to finish on, isn't it? Because like I said before, the higher self is connected to spirit, unconditional love, light, consciousness. Okay, I'm pretty sure that is the last card, and yes, it is. Jesus was a being who had an ego because he grew up in a family, right? He was a carpenter. He, through, I guess, over time, he integrated his higher self. He actually woke up to who he was. Okay? He was a fully integrated being. Also beautiful masculine and feminine aspects in balance, which is another thing we could have brought in with Sirian here. Because, actually it was this one here, yin-yang balance, is the masculine and feminine aspects of your ego. If you can start looking at balancing those, that will assist you with your higher self as well, higher self integration, definitely. So like I was saying, that Jesus had masculine and feminine aspects perfectly in balance as well, but he's really just saying pray always. So he's saying that your higher self is always connected to spirit, and because of that your ego is always connected to spirit, and the more the ego can bring on board your higher self in integration, the more likelihood you will feel that you can do this. And the other thing is that he's saying, even if you don't feel like you're integrating, just keep praying. Pray always, regardless of what phase you feel like you're in here. Because when you pray, you're appealing to your higher self, and that also sends a message to spirit that, hey, you are wanting to activate your higher self, become aware of it and integrate it, and you do get spiritual backing and spiritual support. And this is also what Jesus is saying. If the more you pray, the more spiritual assistance you'll get from spirit. Because if you think about it, if you don't ask for help, like Jesus said, you've got to knock on the door. You've actually got to ask. If you're just in ego and you never ask, guess what's going to happen? You won't get any assistance. It's logical. It's also working in accordance with the law of free will, and it's everyone has a choice. If you don't want to ask, that's your choice. If you do want to ask, there is assistance available. Okay? It's pure and simple, and that's what he's saying. If you want to look that up, it says Luke 21:36. And I do not go to church. I'm not a member of a church. I don't actually read the Bible daily. There's a lot of stuff in it that I agree with. There's also a lot of stuff in it that I think is, for me, I don't agree with personally. But in terms of Jesus being alive and him being a credible being, bang on. I think he's an awesome example of someone who's very evolved, beautifully integrated, and he had to live in really challenging times too. Okay, there was a lot of stuff going on that he had to deal with. Same as right now, there's a lot of stuff going on that we've got to deal with. Okay, but yeah, so that has been awesome, folks. And this image here is really lovely and supportive. So basically, these are all the so-called riches, aka skills and abilities that the ego has, but also there might be some challenges, some bit of woundedness, and a bit of like trauma, upsets, experiences that have been that have caused dysfunction, possibly. Okay, that the higher self is really saying, look, I've got your back. I understand what's been going on, and you know what, I can help you. It's so true. Now, I really thank everyone for listening, because this was such a long video. but I really hope that there was some assistance given there, and I'd really like to thank the Arcturian, Sirian and Blue Avian collectives, because we've had some beautiful synchronicities. This one here, that image is just amazing. That's literally the ego and the higher self working together. Okay, so positive and negative benefits for your ego. Positive and negative aspects of your ego you could write down, okay, on a piece of paper. Now, the higher self, you might even like to do a page, line down the middle, positive aspects of it, negative aspects. One of the negative aspects, I think, that might be that say for instance, someone might write, well, I don't understand it. I don't feel like I can connect to it. Like, what the hell is it and where is it? And there might be some other emotions that come up there as a result of, well, why didn't anyone tell me about this before? Why was I brought up not being told that it's a completely valid thing? Okay, now, if you feel like you're one of those people that's that perhaps this video has caused some emotions to come up, all I can say is just do some writing. Okay, love and care for yourself, and maybe go talk to a friend about it, or someone that you feel that is kind of on the same page with you. Okay, or you can actually do a thing too where you get your phone, switch it on, do a voice recorder and just speak into it, because sometimes you can, if you express yourself verbally, you can swear or do whatever you need to do on there. Okay, that can help you to get it off your chest as well. Okay, or talk into a video camera like what I'm doing now. It can be therapeutic, believe it or not, but obviously if you feel really upset, please talk to someone. Or do some artwork. I mean, you might be mildly pissed off, or you might just be like, oh my god, but you can work out what you need to do. Okay, I'll leave that up to your intelligent discretion. So thanks for listening, and just remember, we're aiming for gradual integration over time. Okay, don't push yourself to do too much too soon. Okay, so thank you for listening. Much love, light and blessings to you, and I will see you next time. Much love. Bye.